Apologies if anybody wanted to talk about that, but we just didn't get time. So we looked at the issue of the fact that it's a fairly dysfunctional system, the asylum system when people first arrive, leaving aside those who are fast-tracked from the camps and who are arriving, as it were, with refugee status already. Those who are arriving and claiming asylum can fall between the system very, very easily, and it can take between 3 months to sometimes years before people actually achieve refugee status. And while that's going on, people are often left without any support. So if those of you who are here before lunch will know I was talking about hosting. There are a number of sort of small-scale local responses to that, and Sholly's project and others are looking at trying to match volunteer responses to that need for people who are arriving as refugees and being left destitute, homeless without support. So this is one of the big issues actually, because there are tens of thousands of people already in that situation, even before the new sort of level of crisis that we've been seeing this summer. The Home Office system is dispersing people. Essentially, when people arrive and claim asylum, they're then dispersed to different cities around the UK. Most often people want to be in London where they may have family and community connections, but often they're dispersed to Middlesbrough, to Cardiff, to Liverpool and other places where they don't really have any connections while their asylum claim is being sorted out. They then have to try and be in touch with a solicitor to carry on this claim. So there are a number of issues around that which can affect people's well-being and housing and other sort of routes through the system. We looked at the various ways that people can fall through the system, and there are a number of them. That safety net is fairly thin, truthfully, in many ways. And then we also next looked at a situation when somebody is granted refugee status. Basically, they then, with that fantastic, we've achieved refugee status, but they then join the queue along with everybody else for housing and other support. And frankly, folks, that's where the biggest structural problem is, because we as a country have not been investing in housing since the 1980s. We don't have a system of investment in housing for people on low incomes, in receipt of benefits. It's getting tighter and tighter. There's less and less of that sort of social housing, public housing, whatever you want to call it, housing association, local authority housing. There's less and less of that housing, even to meet the needs of the existing population, let alone new, young people coming up, people arriving in this country and so on. So this housing crisis that we're in is deepening. So that is the big campaigning point, really. And if anybody's got any answers to that, I'd really love to talk to you, because it's winning hearts and minds. It's sort of proving to government, actually, we could be investing in housing. We should be investing in housing. It's a political sort of hot potato, but truthfully, we should be investing in housing. And this is the big sort of uphill battle that we're facing. Part of it is hearts and minds, especially in relation to refugees, that when we looked at it from a local authority perspective, we need to say these are people with energy, these are people who are arriving here there'll be assets to the community, people with creative skills, people with much to offer, as our speakers today have shown, and as I'm sure, we're open to that conversation in this audience, but that's not a mainstream sort of perception of refugees. We've got this sort of culture of austerity of we can't afford this, we can't afford housing, we can't afford new schools. We can afford these things, folks. And these folks who are arriving are bringing energy and contributing, not being a burden to the community. So from a local authority perspective, I think winning that argument, saying we've got to provide a little bit of help to these folks when they first arrive, but look, they're really going to contribute to the local economy, to the local community. We looked at a few other things within this as well. There are the structural issue really is about where local housing allowance will cover rents, because rents are going up, as we know, especially in London and other parts of the country. Local housing allowance is not sufficient to cover those rents, especially for people under 35 and for larger families. So those are two particular groups where it's quite hard to find even private rented sector housing that's affordable to people on local housing allowance. So that is an area where I think we can work together as community people, linking up with landlords, ethical landlords, faith groups, it demands creativity. We've almost come to the point where the housing association movement sort of started. Here is a housing need, there's no provision for folks. We've almost got to kind of start that whole cycle again, create new housing vehicles which will create affordable housing for people on low incomes and in need. So it's quite big stuff, but it's stuff that each of us, if we're really kind of informed about the issues and engaging with others. I'm not quite sure where the tech fits in with all that, but others within the group did have some points to make on that. I don't know if anybody else within the group wants to say what we were talking about in relation to tech. Certainly tech has something to offer within kind of matching offers of help with people in need, but in a wider way as well. I think sort of building up that sort of space whereby people can sort of present, as it were, and be part.
Was there any opinion? Sorry to interrupt, but I mean, was there any opinion on that, like this Airbnb for refugees thing, or did that get discussed?
We talked a bit about that. I mean, I think that can be a good way of matching people, but it also needs human input, doesn't it? In terms of the safeguarding, in terms of the kind of matching and the kind of finessing stuff, and the supporting relationships as well.
Cool. Okay. Thanks. Thanks
Okay.
very much. Fantastic. Okay, next presentation. Who's up for education? So you both doing it?
Yeah, we can share.
That should be on, I think. Yeah.
Hi everyone. In terms of education, to make it easier, we divided it into separate two entities. First one, the refugees who are living in the camps, and the refugees who are traveling or who reached Europe, whether in camps or internally displaced. So I'm going to talk about the refugees who are living in the camps or who are internally displaced in their home country. So we have a lot of problems. I'm not going to mention all of them because of lack of time. Things we have teachers, sources, and technologies that we can provide to the camp. We came up with different suggestions and solutions. One of them is to have a lot of people now at the universities do internship schemes or years abroad. So we recommended to have internship schemes where the students, wherever they're studying Arabic studies or Islamic or political international relations, coding, go to have 3 months training in the refugee camp where they teach children, and also students who are doing translation can interpret between them both. And also these things will add marks to their degree and will be added to the university SCR, where university will be responsible socially. And the students usually pay for these schemes. So after charging like feasible amount of money for these schemes, we can try to fund ourselves for the hardware and the technology that we need. In case of dangerous areas or the internally displaced people, we recommended a platform where we can connect people virtually, where they can speak to each other and they will get the chance to share experiences and have one-to-one courses, which is beneficial because it offers people here first-hand experience working with refugees, and it also reflects the reality and relates more to people. This is regarding the people inside, and also we needed to find new sharing economy techniques. So for example, when donors donate money, all they care about is the numbers that they help to try to publish to the public, and we wanted to make the interest of the donors or of the corporates that are helping us is how to spread more knowledge and more education rather than showing off numbers and they mention statistics that they will use to show their partners. This is for the people inside the camps. Now he's going to talk about the people who are outside the camps and will reach Europe.
Thank you, Barat, for talking about the kids inside the camp. So our group of, I think, 7 people focused about learning outside of the camps, and we had to take into consideration a number of factors. The very first of which we decided was empathy. So for us to come up with any actionable, workable, even feasible solutions, we have to be empathetic towards those needs we're trying to address. So putting ourselves in the shoes of these kids who are 6 to 12, maybe perhaps a little bit older, having missed 3 or 4 years of school, having had trauma, psychosocial situations that are foreign to perhaps all of us. Taking that into consideration is the first step to coming up with any actionable and useful products to help educate these kids. And after we do so, I guess we can do so through a number of ways, through visiting these camps, through getting to know these kids, through spending time with them, through trying to teach them in traditional and non-traditional ways at the very, very beginning, and then getting to know what their needs are. If someone's cold, they're not going to be able to learn. So getting to know the full picture and not coming from a top-down perspective is of the essence here. That was number one. Number two, we had a girl in our group, Lily, who works for the UNICEF. I forget where she's sitting, in the corner, which brought up the idea of a safe space. So UNICEF has certain safe spaces that they put along these routes for refugees, which provide a safe space for kids, for them to feel comfortable, for them to feel like kids, not adults, as they often do throughout the journey. So I think bringing that idea and taking it to cities, to communities around countries in Europe and elsewhere where refugees are being relocated, I think is a worthwhile concept. The third idea we talked about was game-based learning, which we touched on the fact that most of these kids are very well-versed with smartphones. A lot of them know more about these cool hip apps than most of us do here. And speaking their language, rewarding them with ways they are used to being rewarded, with looking at the games they're already playing. What are they doing with these phones? How are they interacting with these phones? Because they are, in many, many ways. And looking at that and using it to develop game-based learning would be something that is very worthwhile and would yield real results. Thank you.
I'll get it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, work. This is work.
Okay, so we'll make this quite short. So the work and jobs and skills, what we focused on initially was around the issues, and then we talked about some of the solutions. So on the issue side, one was just acknowledging there's a lot of overlap between lots of different initiatives happening and activities, and trying to find a way to really, amongst ourselves, coordinate and align so we don't end up just having lots of little different things happening, and actually trying to make it more efficient and also easier actually for the refugees to access. The second was very much this challenge that people are facing around transferring of their experiences, their skills and their certifications when they're coming to a new host country. So what are the ways in which that can be made more effective and more easy through use of technologies? And it's complex because it gets into issues around certification, how do you prove? But that's clearly something which is proven to be a big barrier when we talk about skills and jobs. The third is acknowledging that there's a general global and local jobs shortage, right? So I think the stat was said like 60 million, we're short 60 million jobs globally. So when you consider that in the context of also trying to get refugees into jobs, you're often being pitched up against local talent. Then there's the fact that there's crazy waiting times while someone's in a country and they're waiting to be processed and get their refugee status. And that can take up to even 24 months in the case of Sudanese refugees entering into Finland, for example. So in that long wait, it can be anything from a few months to 24 months. Actually, how are people, when they have no means of income, they have no status, what are the ways to engage those individuals in a way that allows them to build out their skills, do voluntary work, and actually feeling like they've got a meaningful role? That was a big one for us. And then, of course, language. How to effectively build language skills when you're only being offered 1 hour of language per week. And then the fact that obviously just retraining and upskilling being quite expensive, so who's actually funding that? So in terms of the solution sets, we kind of as a group were thinking about areas where we saw, I guess, alignment amongst ourselves, but also where we still saw a core problem to be resolved. So for us, the first was in terms of using that, what we call waiting time, more effectively. So actually, we're going to, a few of us, stay in touch and think about, even Funzi is doing some of this already, but how could that time be used more effectively where you provide online tools, skills, training, where you're upskilling, providing language skills, etc., in that 12-month waiting time, such that at the end of that 12 months, if you then get your work status, your refugee status, you're then actually better positioned to enter the job market, and you've got your language skills, etc. And if you are rejected and sent back, at least you're going back with some new additional skills as well, and that time hasn't just been redundant. So we feel there's a lot to be done around that space, and we're going to stay in touch as a group and actually think about ways to address that. The second is actually around digital jobs, because when you're in your waiting time, you're obviously not allowed to take paid employment, and so again, you need income, right? So again, we're staying in touch about ways, amongst a few of us who are already doing this, collaborating on digital job opportunities cross-border. So if someone's sitting in Finland, or they're sitting in France, or the UK, ways to be able to access paid digital jobs. And then I think lastly was the idea of this qualification certification. We don't have an answer. We just recognise it's a real problem, and that there are apps that exist that try and do that transfer of your certificates, your skills from other countries to the new home country, but that's actually still, the verification piece of that is still very tricky. There's not common standards, there's not common alignment about which of those apps should be used. So it's one to be further explored, but we don't have an answer yet. So that's us.
Okay, legals.
So, legal is not a very sexy word. So we chose to take the angle of legal as helping the legal process for refugees in Europe. So basically, I'll go first to identify what's the process, what is the main values we see or principle of the process, then the pains at the moment with that process, and then the solution we thought, technical solutions for that. So the main principle or values we thought is in the legal process that refugees have to go through, there's a problem of data, or there's a principle of data protection. Data protection means that their data is safe and not used by someone else. When someone gives you their data, they want to trust you, and they need to be informed that nobody will share their information or make money out of this. So this is one of the principles that we thought the registration the data protection was around and important. Then we understood from talking with UNHCR how registration at UNHCR is essential. Basically, registration at the UNHCR provides you with a world recognition that you are a refugee. Once the UNHCR says you're a refugee, you are a refugee, and the government can try to say it or not, but you are. Doesn't mean that you don't have to go through specific processes in each country, but then by principle you've been recognized as a refugee, so that should help if you have to appeal in that country because your application has been refused and you've been pleading UN as recognized as a refugee. So it's important that people register. And the third value principle is it needs to be clear, simple, transparent information. And it needs to compare the different options for a refugee. It needs to be accessible to all. And what really information the refugees want is not much on the process, the administrative process, that's a step-by-step thing and we can't change it. It's about what's the next step for my life abroad. How long will it take for me to be recognized as a refugee? Will it take me 6 months? Will it take me 15 years? I need to know that before getting into the UK and knowing that I won't be working for 15 years. Even though I speak English, but maybe in 6 months I can learn Swedish, because after being granted after having applied for asylum in Sweden, you can automatically work after. And if people knew that, maybe they wouldn't try to come to the UK or speak French or something. So these were the three: data protection, how registration is essential, and how this information needs to be simple and transparent. Now, the pain is for the registration is physical, and if you're a child, you have to have a parent or a letter of endorsement, so that makes it even more complicated. Registration points at the moment are overwhelmed, crowded. They have queues outside, and now there's a widely known discrimination at the nationality. So Syrians are apparently fast-tracked, and it's creating problems in camps. So that's one pain. Registration is physical. Then, secondly, the second pain is the process for asylum is different in each country. It's absolutely it's extremely difficult to navigate every system of every country. It's extremely difficult to access that information because it's going to be in Swedish or in German or in the language of origin. It's going to be in the legal jargon. And most of the time, you're not going to find that website that tells you the step by step because you just have to pay for a lawyer. So it's an information that is expensive. So how there's a pain to have that one place or a place where we compare relevant data. And the third pain was data and protection and trust. Again, data protection, and you said it's very important. Now, every day the UNHCR gets hacked, and most governments, you don't get hacked, but you get attacked. Sorry, you don't get hacked. Sorry.
It's important to know if actually Madison can get hacked, we can get hacked as well. So it's important to have an encrypted stuff and now we don't get hacked.
Sorry, I just don't conclusion. But no, they don't get hacked. But they are subjected like anyone who has information like this. You have to understand refugees fleeing away, maybe for political reasons. So it needs to be protected. So for that matter, we thought of this, how it could work, the solution. First, the data needs to be owned by a trustworthy agency that has the capacity of protecting UNHCR. So it needs to be operated by UNHCR, and UNHCR has a system where they sort of can synchronize their database of registered people with the government database, because government databases are different and they want to do it themselves. But if we can create a software that can link and sync those information,
It's political now.
it's political.
Yeah.
But that would be a solution if we could do that. And then, and I'll wrap it up. So, okay, normally I'm very...
What's the last?
The
What's
last
piece?
And so it just would need, we were thinking of pre-registration. You would use your phone, you would pre-register with your voice, with taking a picture of yourself. But then again, data protection, so we would use nicknames and we would use like information that you only know, like a bank account you're trying to get in, you're trying to just encrypt information. So you could pre-register instead of physically go somewhere. So you would have already sort of pre-registered.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Hello.
It's fake. I need a
Who wants to
microphone.
talk about the calendar? There it is.
Yeah, I have one. It's fine. I'll go with this.
Stand over here.
So, with the discussion on Calais, we kind of opened it up thinking about why is Calais this really sort of important place for all of us and what we're doing in the refugee crisis. Calais has obviously been in existence for over a decade now. It's one of our only reminders that the refugee crisis is really going on, besides these really hard-hitting, kind of depressing point stories about how many people drowned or how many people are moving from one country to another in a short period of time. So it's kind of an important place that we should look at. How can we develop a different relationship with Calais, and how can we reframe what's going on there? Because the reality there is not the reality that we kind of all know about. So, in Calais, the other day I saw this interesting image on one of our blogs with one of our refugees welcome solidarity groups. And it was the refugee camp in Turkey and all of these nicely aligned houses, kind of placed in a long row, and then showing Calais and comparing the number and saying, look what they did in Turkey, but they can't organize it in Calais. At the same time, if you go there, it's kind of this weird anarchist dream in Calais. So there's art everywhere, people are doing creative stuff, and it's this mixture of, the freedom to develop things in a grassroots manner, intertwined with a complete structural and institutional failure to actually get anything concrete on that. So our first thought was looking at how can we reframe the way we're talking about Calais in a way in which we empower all of these beautiful local projects that are working much more in direct action, while at the same time recognizing the institutional problems with trying to, for instance, build a 1,500-person dorm within Calais, ignoring a lot of the dynamics on the ground. For instance, people there don't really integrate amongst A, Calais as a city, B, the little communities that are there. On that, we started looking at how do we look at these passion points. So it's things like food, football, music, poetry, writing. And how do you develop person-to-person sort of campaigns in which you're allowing organizations to come in, exact on, or play with those things that everyone feels passionate about and they can sort of unite people. And then develop those into a greater narrative or a greater campaign that leads to something that really reframes our understanding of the refugee situation. So in terms of what we're doing on a personal level, it's going to look like raising a awareness through football and a language through football program there over 3 months, and then immediately ahead of the Euro, when all of these eyes and cameras are being focused on France, you host a massive tournament amongst refugee football teams and ideally former athletes to come in and sort of change our understanding. So rather than your story constantly being based on these negative points, it's look at this positivity that's being created by local people on the ground. And I think that that's something we can really generally apply to the way all of us sort of do things. I mean, when I look at what people in the work side said, or what people in the housing side said, all of these, or even the education group said, all of these things employ bringing volunteers in to touch on these passion points and creating person-to-person relationships. But those relationships are only so valuable if we don't take those then and create some sort of constructive big message around them afterwards that remind us that there's actually a lot of human good and remarkable quality moments that are going on throughout this whole stuff. We end up just sort of falling into this gloom of depression over how everything works. And Calais is sort of a reflection of that as a town right now. While we should all be really sort of galvanized and pumped because we're all in the room thinking about this and going to do something else. Cheers, guys.
Right, we have one last speaker who's going to talk about money, which is useful. But before we do that, I just want to say quickly that we want to do a spring TechFugees again, being very, very, and bring together people again. But we want your feedback. Please send us your feedback, mike@techfugees.com, or send it to Petra, send it to the team, send it to everybody you've interacted with. If you've been taking notes today, publish them somewhere, link to them on TechFugees, put them onto Slack, join TechFugees Facebook, put them in there. Or if you've got notes, you've got pictures, fantastic. I've got something I need to say briefly. As a result of today, I'm slightly crossing the streams now because basically TechCrunch, who I work for in my day job, are doing a hackathon over the weekend. It's a big, huge hackathon. And we had somebody from TechCrunch here on the kind of business side, and he has decided, as a result of this, rather generously, not at my prompting, to set aside a table for TechFugees. And with that is, now let me just explain. So we've got an Esri mapping. Esri mapping is coming to a hackathon on the weekend. And this is a mapping platform, okay? So it's specifically going to be useful for people who want to do mapping projects. I'm standing in the wrong place, sorry, Tom. So what we heard about this morning is about information location. If someone this afternoon has a data set or technology that could potentially be integrated with the map, then if they come to the hackathon and provide that to the hackers, then they could get free development in terms of integrating it with Esri's maps. Okay? They would need to provide their own engineers to help, but we have over 700 hackers, developers, engineers, whatever you want to call them, taking part. So the only issue is that whoever takes part cannot be commercially gaining from it. It's about helping the TechFugees cause. So if you want to talk to me about that, if you're interested in that, come and see me. We are going to also turn this into, in order to keep up the momentum of the conversation, we're going to do a meetup in the new year, much more informal. We will get a kind of a space somewhere, possibly at Newspeak House. We'll do a meetup just to keep the conversation going, so that anybody else who wants to engage with what's going on to come and reconnect again. And then we'll do a spring conference again. Petra's going to hate me, but we're going to try and do that. And finally, there's been lots of stuff coming out of here, and I think we might do actually something specifically around storytelling and digital media, which is very much coming out now. So storytelling around the refugee issue, but in digital media, much more of a media kind of event. I think that's more or less it, other than to say thank you to our sponsors, Find My Path, Skills Matter, Vodafone Foundation, very deep pockets of Stefan Glenza VC and Tune Picks. And now our final speaker is Mark Strong from Innovation Hub DFID, so go for it, Mark.
I should say,
Stand up.
yeah, nice. Thank you, Mike, as well. And it's been an amazing day. It's been fantastic to be here, kind of from the start all the way to where we are now, and even the first technology to come through. So thank you as well, I guess, for all coming. I've heard so much and had so many kind of new insights from being here today, so thank you for that. I work at the Innovation Hub at the Department for International Development. It's a word we love to use, innovation, but we are always looking for kind of new people to be involved with, new ideas, new technologies, new methodologies that we can use. I spoke to our migration team before coming here today, and it was great to hear from UNICEF as well. They were saying one of their big priorities at the moment is how to ensure the protection of women and children who are often quite easily exploited. So I'm hoping kind of some of the solutions, some of the ideas that people have batting around maybe have a part to play in that. And I think at the Department for International Development, we also, one of our kind of number one mantras is to leave no one behind. We're talking our communication group about how many men we're using at the mobile phone charging stations. And it struck me often we see in kind of sub-Saharan Africa, men own the mobile phone and women don't always have a mobile phone. And I was wondering, I don't know what the facts are on the ground, but whether or not that is the same case in this situation. And maybe we need to make sure we don't leave anybody behind. We include women in the conversation and make sure they have the same information that we are providing. So I wanted to just talk to you very quickly about kind of how Divid is tackling migration, which isn't the whole picture, but may just give you a flavour. So we kind of set our priorities in three main areas. The first is tackling the root causes of migration in Africa. The second is providing a package of support to people both inside Syria and those who have fled to neighbouring countries. And the third is to provide immediate humanitarian assistance both in Europe and in Northern Africa. We tend to do this through kind of financial support, and we use kind of larger implementation organisations like UNHCR, like the Red Cross and the International Organisation on Migration. We tend to use these partners because they have kind of proven experience and monitoring and evaluation of how to work in a humanitarian crisis. Also, a lot of the people they're working with are vulnerable people, and we need to ensure their safety. So these organisations are kind of trustworthy to us. And they also offer the potential to kind of scale and work on, across international borders. So I just wanted to kind of come and say what I can offer to you. So do take me up on this. That's our team's email address. We are kind of open to having conversations, listening to what you're up to, try and make connections with other people or some of our partners who are actually implementing on the ground. So do feel free to drop me a line. I can also point you towards our migration team if you want some kind of insights about what's happening. One of the funding mechanisms we set up a couple of years ago is called the Global Innovation Fund. Have a look. It doesn't focus specifically on refugees itself or on migration, but it looks kind of across the board about what we can do in any development challenge or any humanitarian challenge and what are new approaches we can take. And they invest in fund. It sits outside governments. They can invest in funding, new initiatives, piloting or scaling up, and even kind of large companies. So do have a look at them. Two other things to point out. A few months ago, we ran a online challenge, which is unfortunately now closed. But that was in partnership with the design firm IDEO.org. So they were offering human-centered design support to education solutions in humanitarian crisis. You can log on to openideo.com and have a look at kind of what solutions kind of won that challenge phase and now going through into kind of development and getting support from the design firm to build those and develop them further. However, alongside that, we're working with UNICEF and UNHCR to do a humanitarian education accelerator. So if any of you are working on education initiatives and you kind of maybe you tried them out at a really small scale, but you want to kind of scale them up. The Humanitarian Education Accelerator, which I haven't put a link to, but just Google it, kind of offers monitoring and evaluation support as well as funding to kind of scale those onto bigger and better things. So they're the mechanisms we have in place now, but otherwise for anything else, do just drop me an email, and always there to kind of listen or be told we should be doing something else. Thank you.
If anybody has any quick questions? No?
Yeah. What kind of funding do you have available through the innovation website?
What funding?
From the Global Innovation Fund.
Yeah.
So that's a partnership between DFID, USA, Media Foundation, Australia, and Sweden as well. So we'll all put in money to that, and it really ranges. I can't remember, like from a few £100,000 up to kind of millions and millions they're willing to invest. The application process to begin with is quite short. It sits outside of government, outside of us, and their risk appetite is a bit bigger. We just fund it. So they're probably not as quick as we'd hope and turn around. I'm not too sure. They kind of do it on a case-by-case basis. But I can find out to you, so do drop me a line on their website. Yeah.
Okay. Question over here.
So this is actually kind of a question around our role as digital workers. I thought that statistic of 60 million jobs less than we have was interesting, and we're always making things more efficient, and oftentimes technology is replacing the role of humans. And in regards to innovation, I just wonder, what the answer is to that question, how technology can empower human roles in society and not make them obsolete.
I know it's a big one.
Yeah.
Try answering that.
Huge question. I mean, I don't know what the answer is to that. One thing I think in the UK, the government digital services are doing amazing things with technology, and especially with transactional services, and how we can kind of listen to users more and people. I would love to see some of that their design principles moved into international development, and us using those principles, much more user-led design in all the work that we do.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much, Mark. And also, Mark, quick question. Are you able to put people, if people come to you and say, this is not for us, can you direct them towards other sources of funding?
I'll be more than
You've
happy
got
to
lots.
try.
You must have a contact book.
I will try. So
you've got a contact book.
More than willing to try.
Yeah, I'm going to come after you if you don't do that. Right. Okay. Good. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. We have one final point which I just want to squeeze in last from Mail. Go. Go.
I don't have a presentation. I just wanted to talk a little bit about this app that we built over the past 2 months, and it's now out on iPhone, hopefully Android coming soon after that. So what it is, it's a simple app that can put you in touch with an interpreter, with a volunteer who is either an experienced interpreter or at least who speaks your language and any other language. Right now we're focusing on Arabic and a few of the other languages involved. This is a call out for interpreters, or if you know people who speak one of these languages, or two of them actually, please get them to download the app where they will be notified whenever they're needed, and if they're available they can just get the person on the phone and help them out to communicate with a doctor or authority figure or any situation. So please get them to download the app, and if you know on the other side any NGOs who might need this or be able to help to get it out there, that would be great. And there's a crowdfunding campaign as well.
Get across the all. Well, I just want to say thank you very much to everyone. Thank you very much to our team, to Petra, to Tom, to Josephine, to Edward, everybody who put this together. Nice one. Now we thank you Vodafone Foundation, who are going to give us a glass of wine and a beer if you would like to join us. And when you are finished here, we have to leave at 7. The pub across the road, I think it's called the Red Lion. If you want to continue the conversation over a pint or whatever, over there, please join us. Thank you so much for supporting this initiative. Hope to see you again. Thank you.
Wife is on the way, she's feeling very cracked up. When she moved to Berlin from America like 10 days ago, and then moved from America to she has to stay next to the venue. We're in, we're in fucking apartment hotel. We are living. I've only been there one night. I don't tell her that. Sorry? I'm happy to. I think she can accept it. It is literally on the Olympic Park.
Yeah.
You going to bring it in?
Yeah, I got 2 seconds. Yeah, I was
last weekend I very hard. It's so good to see you. I feel like I'm going to become one of those boring married people. You should play basketball so I can go around. Really? That bad? For what? For my back.
nice, okay. Yeah.
You know what's funny? My best friend said he was the one I was just when he got married, and I stopped. And you're the two people. Well, I reckon I've had this ripple effect. All my males. Looks like they're getting close to fundraising. So all of a sudden, it's I've got so many things. And I saw her, she was terrifying. I think she's really very conservative. Well, no, I mean, I've got so many things out there at the moment. I'm going to try and I've got 3 or 4 pictures one way or another going to at the moment. Okay. I've got one. The thing about it, I mean, I just don't want I know it's confidential, but you know, you spoke about doing it. Every time I see you, I've got the problem is I'm now struggling so much. This is pretty well managing my residency project. I used to help get video branding and stuff. And I'm planning doing what? Probably crowdfunding my own and I'm beginning to find a clear role for me in furniture. say about the relationship, but he's now saying that you can absolutely do this strategy,
Thank you.
it's not work, it's some money, but
Lots of tips. There's some YouTubers. You know what YouTube went down because there was a music in the video that went on show and set us some thing at their end and basically they contacted the rights holder that song. We then came on stage and shut down our account.
maybe, yeah.
Otherwise, they can
You'll be
be
there.
The other thing that and also for the combination of which is not but you can do pipelines like this and that's project more bad
So you came for today, and has it been good and helpful?
Sorry, did you?
like has it been helpful to your just short like this, sorry. I could just say maybe X, but it's a lot easier. Maybe X, the 19 million project is mental health
Tired, head, you need a drink. I know, I'm sure. And I have a few spare ones. You want to make sure the whole team gets a drink.